All right. Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to the Double S podcast. Today, I'm introducing one of my friends that I got to meet over the year, and his name is Rob. He's a counselor and a worship director who stepped in full ministry at a young age, and we're gonna dive into a journey. Also, we're gonna talk about what he does for a living, but also we're gonna get into his spiritual realm as well. So, introducing Rob. How you doing?
Oh man, I'm doing good. Do I look at you? Do I look at the camera?
You can do whatever.
Cool.
Yeah.
Man, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. So, I know we already talked off camera, but how did you get into counseling?
Man, so like I told you, I said nosy, but for the sake of the podcast, I've always been inquisitive. So I've always wanted to know, like, why do people think the way that they do? Why do people act the way that they act, right? And so for me, I was like, man, this just interests me a lot. So my senior year in high school, we had a psychology course, and I didn't even know what psychology was. And so psychology is simply the study of life. So we would learn certain things, and I was like, man, this is really cool. Oh, so this is why, like, the middle child is the way that they are, typically, like, in one family, and you can almost copy and paste the same type of, like, traits in a different family. Like, same person, or excuse me, middle family, or excuse me, middle child in a family for one family, and then the next family, and it's almost the same kind of traits. Now, give or take, like, cultural differences and norms, like, it was just really cool, like, learning those kind of things. And so I was like, man, okay, well, I could be a psychologist. And I think it was maybe my sophomore year of college, I declared marketing. Why marketing, not psychology? I don't know why I did that.
Yeah.
And I think actually, so I lied. So sports marketing back in high school was it for me. Coach Sparks, I'll never forget him. It was really cool. He made marketing very fun, and it was about sports.
Yeah.
So it was like sports marketing or psychology, and I was like, well, they don't have sports marketing major at A&T is where I went to. So I was like, well, I'll do marketing. That's gonna be cool. And so I just kind of like thought about psychology. I was like, man, I'll take maybe like a couple classes here and there, and one thing led to another. I swapped majors, studied psychology instead of marketing. Figured out I don't want to be a psychologist. I'd rather be a counselor / therapist. And so that's how I got there.
How did your counselor take that when you were switching majors?
I'm trying to remember how it went. I think my advisor in college was fine with it because I didn't completely drop marketing. Like, that's my minor. I minored in marketing. So, and it just worked out. I feel like this was a setup by God, like just grace and mercy.
Yeah.
Marketing, a lot of the classes kind of met the prerequisites for psychology.
Yeah.
So it was like it was almost
they
a lot
work,
of them.
they work together. Yeah.
Not necessarily like interchangeable courses, but a lot of the prerequisites and things that you needed for both courses, I mean, it was the same thing. So I was like, oh man, it's dope. So I didn't have to stay in school for an extra year. I just had to take maybe 2 or 3 extra classes my junior year, senior year. So he was pretty chill. He was fine. He was fine about it and give me a hard time. He was like, hey man, if this is what you want to do, go for it. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to do. So I went for it.
Oh wow. No, my counselor, she got mad at me because I went into nursing. Because I asked the advisor at the time, I was like, hey, like, is there anything, the audio engineer, anything like that in this college? He was like, no, we don't. And I was like, oh, okay. So I went for nursing. Only went there for 3 months, and I was like, you know what? Let me do my own research.
Oh, my
and they're like, it's a 180. Like, what are you doing? I was like, well, this is what I love doing. Nursing is just like, I love helping people out, and I also took some psychology classes as well. I love helping people, and especially like getting into someone's mind and understanding what they're going through or why they're doing it just because out of hurt or anything like that. Because I know there's some people that do stuff without realizing, and that's why sometimes I just love getting to understand new people and how they act. But
Yeah.
do you ever catch yourself getting into people's shoes most of the time?
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, that's like a core foundation for, or let me say it like this. I think that's like a fundamental building block for being a competent therapist, which is like being empathetic.
Yeah.
And so some counseling jargon, or I say therapist jargon, is empathetic understanding. And so you basically described it, like being able to walk a mile in their shoes. And so that's always the goal when I'm speaking with the client. I don't know what it's like to be a parent. I've never had kids. I've worked with kids though. I don't know what it's like to be married.
Yeah.
But I can resonate with core emotions like sadness. I know what it's like to be sad. I know what it's like to be angry. I know what it's like to be annoyed of something. I know what it's like to feel helpless in situations. So maybe I don't know exactly what they're going through from their perspective.
Yeah.
But I do try my best to walk a mile in their shoes.
Okay.
So to answer your question, absolutely.
Is it hard to how would I say it? Like to not detach yourself, but when you're helping somebody or anything like that, not putting your own input, if that makes sense?
Yeah. There are some clients where it's like you really want to tell them what to do. But it's always been instilled. It was always instilled in me, like since grad school, not to do that. And sometimes like, and this is actually a life lesson for me. Like I think about it from the perspective of like a tutor, like a math tutor, whatever kind of academic tutor. If they were to always do the homework for you and always do your assignments for you, you would never learn. So like they'll walk you through it, and when you walk through something, they're like, okay, so if you're supposed to do, think of PEMDAS, right?
Okay,
like
yeah.
that method, and they're like, okay, you have parentheses here. This is a multiplication and some addition, X, Y, Z, yada yada yada. Like, okay, what do you think you should do here? Now, keep in mind, PEMDAS, right? Like we're in chapter 6, so we've been learning PEMDAS. So what is that method, right? And then they're walking you through the method. Like that's one thing, but then to do the problem, that's a whole nother thing. And so for me as a therapist, I try not to give input. I try not to give input from the perspective of like, this is what you need to do, this is how you need to do it, because they're not learning.
Yeah.
It's just, oh, Rob is thinking for me.
Yeah.
And then also, let me be humble. I don't have all the answers. Like as a therapist, I think that's like a common misconception. People think that therapy, you go there and all your problems get solved. And that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
Like life is supposed to, hopefully life gets better and more manageable, but like keyword manageable.
Yeah.
And so like if I give them some advice and it's not right, then they come back and they're like, Rob, you told me to break up with so and so, and now my life is miserable.
Yeah.
I'm never coming back, right? Like so that's just some reasons as to why we refrain from input.
Got you. Out of curiosity, what would you say to a person that they heard your advice, they try to implement it, but then they go running back to their original plan, and then they're like, oh, Rob doesn't know, but then they keep going into a cycle. Like, oh, I'm going to go to Rob, and then, all right, I'm going to take it for a few weeks and then do the same thing as I did back then. What would you say to those people that go into that concert cycle of going, learning, and then taking some steps back again?
I think kind of going back to what we talked about with empathy, there's been points and times in my life where I've sought advice, sought counsel, got good counsel, good wisdom, and then threw it out the window, or struggled with like getting out of a habit that I was in, even though I got some advisement that didn't necessarily endorse what I was already doing. So like I can empathize with that.
Yeah.
Sometimes like I forgot who said this, but it takes like 21 days to build a new habit. So sometimes it's like repetitive that we continue to talk about the same thing over and over each session until it's one day dawns on them like, oh, I should stop doing that. Yeah, you should.
I think there's also a new thing that's like every 7 years, you leave an old habit but came with a new habit. I think that's what it is. I might put it somewhere over here. But this is not in the questions I was gonna ask, but for a person that has a negative reaction, I think that's what it's called, a negative reaction when something happens to them, and let's say like a relationship wise, and everybody else that sees it from the outside point of view, they're like, yo, this person is just using you, blah blah blah, this, blah blah that. But they're putting in their mindset like, oh, like I remember that a few months ago she just treated me well, but they don't see that that they're getting hurt. What would you recommend for those people that they don't see the danger that's going on, but they keep reflecting back? They're like, oh, but they can become this person like back then as they treated me once.
Are you saying like the person that's coming to therapy is like wanting to go back to someone and they're not necessarily like suitable for them? And but they're kind of like trying to go off of potential, like I can fix them.
Or let's say like 2 weeks ago they treated them like beautifully. They did all the right stuff and all that, but then the next day it's just back to square one. But they hold to that one potential, like, they're like, hey, like I remember that you did this 2 weeks ago. I know that I say this because like I've been through that. But what would you say to a person that is going through that or has been through that?
No, that's a good question, because again, being empathetic, I can be like, hey, I know what it's like to like cling on to one good moment or a couple good moments, but the bad outweighs the good, right? Like there were more bad moments than there were good moments. And I mean, I'm kind of answering the question now, but really kind of weigh out the pros and cons, right? Of like, if I go back, what's the good that comes with it, right? But also, what's the bad?
Gotcha.
It's easy for some people, and I can't quantify it, but it's easy for some people to like step into a relationship or step into a situation, and then come out of that and then start to reflect on it, and all of a sudden forget side A or side B of the tape. There's always two sides to it. There's always a side A to the tape and a side B. So weigh that out. Which side was better? Because you gotta experience both. So if it's more negative than positive, then that might be telling you something.
Okay, gotcha. What if there's a kid? Let's say there's a kid going through maybe a panic attack or anything like that. What would you recommend, like breathing exercises or, because back then I used to cope with anxiety. I wouldn't say I had anxiety, but I had a little bit of like moments where I'm just like I felt not attacked, but I would say when I'm in a crowded room, I always did this, like was very fidgety, but very secluded. What would you say for those people that like if there's anything that they can deal with their anxiety or anything like that?
The biggest thing, and we talked about this off camera, but doing mindfulness breathing. And the reason why is because oftentimes when you're facing anxiety and symptoms of that, you know, like for example, your stomach starts to hurt, you know, become fidgety, you get cold, right? Like your teeth may start to chatter. You know, those kind of symptoms, it's your fight or flight starting to kick in. Right, and it's pretty self-explanatory. Like your body wants to fight, or you want to get out of there. So your body's taking into like this emergency kind of mode. And so when you breathe, when you control your breathing, what you start to do is let your body know, like, hey, chill, we're good, we're good. You're not in danger. Nobody's hurting you. You're in an uncomfortable situation. Two things can be true at once. You're in an uncomfortable situation, but you're okay.
Gotcha.
Or excuse me, you're in an uncomfortable situation and you're okay.
Gotcha.
So, you know, that's one of the biggest things. And it's so cliche because every therapist says mindfulness breathing. You'll hear that all the time. But it wasn't until like I told you, I don't like public speaking. Like, man, I get nervous. I'm nervous now. And but when I did my breathing exercises, like I did it in front of people, and I made it to where it was like not obvious. It was kind of a low key kind of exercise.
Yeah.
But I could literally feel myself starting to rest. And so like I was all fidgety. I was like, oh my God, like I don't want to speak in front of people. But until I started to breathe, like, did the situation change? No. But how I felt and my perspective shifted because I was able to be level-headed, level-minded.
Gotcha.
And yeah, it just made the situation a lot better, easier, manageable.
Yeah. How would you say can you approach somebody like that? Let's say they're fidgety and you can see they're in distress, but you know that they're in a safe environment or anything like that. How can you approach somebody without setting them off, if that makes sense?
You know, if they're able to cooperate verbally and, you know, you're able to have a conversation, have some dialogue, you know, see what's going on. I know, like, for me, outside of being a therapist, taking the therapist hat off, like, I want to just fix the problem. Like, man, what's going on? Oh, all you got to do is stop doing this. Blah, blah, blah. Start doing this. Or here, do this. Yeah. Right? But sometimes that doesn't help. So if they are verbally communicative, then what you can do is just talk to them, see what's happening. Right? Just learn a little bit more. Not listening to respond, but listening to understand, you know, what's happening. And that's a big difference, right? Yeah. Like, when someone feels heard and validated, it's like, man, okay, I can kind of confide in this person, let them know what's going on. Yeah. And it's the small things, right? Like, I like to say this in session, it's the small things, quote unquote, because sometimes those small things actually mean a world's difference. So I would start there. If they're not able to, like, some people just don't want to talk in these kind of situations. Try to help them with the breathing. Try to help them breathe. Yeah. So you might not see them, like, physically struggling, but, you know, like, mentally, emotionally, on the inside, it could be a whole different experience. Gotcha. So that would be my thought. And again, I'm a rookie therapist, so that's one thing I want to mention. I've only been a full-time therapist for, what has it been, 6 months? 6 months. 6 months.
Yeah, because you graduated last year.
May of 2024. Yeah, but I've been seeing clients going on 3 years. 3 years. So I'm still figuring things out. So if any therapists that have been in the game much longer, if I'm saying anything wrong, please correct me. You know, show me some love and have some grace, but definitely correct me. I'm open to being constructively criticized. Yeah,
absolutely. And, like, again, this is all for us to learn, especially when it comes to these situations. You can come to here, or you can go search it up online. There's always, like, a therapy out there. There's Betterhelp, I think. It's not sponsored, but I've never been to Betterhelp. Sponsor me. What's the challenge that you faced that when you were going through all this, when graduating? Because I know, like, for me, nursing, it was just bang, 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 bang. Here's the knowledge. You have to learn this, this, and this, and this. What were some challenges that you were getting to when you were going into counseling?
Man, I was working at the church full time. I was in school part time, but it was still Monday through Thursday. So it really felt full time. And then I was seeing clients on the weekend. So I was working literally every day. Yeah, and I've been doing that for 3 years now. So I'm just like, I'm done. I'm tired.
How's your sleep schedule?
Sleep schedule is fine. Yeah, like I'm gonna get sleep. Yeah. So yeah, but that was the biggest struggle, was just like there was no free time. And you know, people cared, and people were like, hey man, you look tired, you know, make sure you get some rest. But what people didn't know was when I was resting, I was giving something up. So for example, like if I was resting, I was coming into work late. If I was resting, then I would be taking a 0 on an assignment or turning it in late, because literally there was no wiggle room. I was giving something up. So that was the biggest struggle. Yeah, time management. Yeah. Oh yeah.
You think it improved when you were in that workflow? You think, were you already good at time management?
No. Dog, I've always procrastinated. Yeah, I still have procrastinating tendencies, so like I gotta fix that. But I've gotten a lot better though, a lot better.
Ooh, if you can change anything, like, going through your whole semester, or like if I wish I could have done this earlier, what would it be?
Man, that's a good question, man. There's a lot of things I wish I would have done differently. But I know, like, looking back at it, realistically, it wouldn't be able to happen. But if, like, all of the realistic possibilities weren't a thing, then I would have done full time. I would have done school full time, finished it in 2 years instead of 3 years. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I should have finished that thing a long time ago.
Okay. Is there any tips that you can give to someone to validate their feelings?
Validate their feelings, like in general, or like
I would say
school?
just in general, or let's say you're counseling a student or anything like that, or to one of the viewers, they might be like, I would say high school, middle school. I would say my main focus is for them, because I feel like there's not a lot of people giving out this information, or they might have to read it, and some of them, they have the expandancy of 5 seconds. So is there a way that you can validate their feelings if they're mad or sad or anything like that? Let's say negative feelings, and then we'll go into positive feelings.
About like themselves and
about
like,
themselves. Like, let's say this person is just mad at the world because one of their friends have said, like, hey, this was happening, blah blah, like, I hate you and all this. How can you validate that anger that she has, and how can she manage it to not just throw the other shoulder to another person when the person is doing good to them?
I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So, like, the one that's being offended, like, what can they, like, what would I say to them?
Yeah.
On a practical level, I would say, kind of weigh out the pros and cons. Like, if you lash out, is it worth it? Like, short term it may feel good, but what are the long term ramifications? Like, all of our actions have a consequence, and consequence, like, most people automatically assume consequence means like bad things happen, but the actual meaning of the word is a result of something. So it could be a good or bad result of an action. So just kind of rule out the consequences, and then, like, from a, I don't want to say like a logical perspective, because when you're in the heat of the moment and like when moods are high, emotions are like jumping out the roof, it's very hard to like tell somebody think logically. But honestly, I would seek counsel from, someone that's been in your position, someone older than you. Whether it's a pastor, whether it's a teacher that you trust, parents that you trust, talk to them.
Gotcha.
If there's any place to lash out, like I say this to all my clients, if there's any place to speak unfiltered, get whatever you got to get off your chest, do it here.
Okay.
But don't do it to your kid here, as in like with me as the therapist in a therapist room, like in a therapist space. Do it here. Do it where like you don't receive bad consequences.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like for that kid, that's dealing with whatever the case may be, like bullying or just a hard time in general, go seek counsel. Find somebody that you can vent to and allow them to speak into your life. So that way, you don't make a mistake that you're gonna regret.
Yeah. For the people that are getting out of a relationship or anything like that, we're going a little deep with it. How long do you think they should stay alone, or how should they cope with a person that, let's just say, for a person that just got out of a relationship, how long should they be alone for?
Oh man. That's hard to tell. Like it's hard to put a number on it. There's certain things to consider. Like we tend to grieve, and grief can be often associated with a loss of a family member.
Yeah.
Excuse me. it can be associated with the loss of a family member, but it also can be extended to like just losing something in general and wanting that thing. And so, how are you grieving something that you were just in, right? And sometimes, if you stay out of the thing long enough, you'll start to see like the effects. You might have pulled like verbal expressions, or you might have pulled like an emotional thing or two from that person that you were with and didn't realize, man, I got that from him. I never used to say this.
Yeah.
And now I do that, right? Like, so again, I can't quantify it and say, okay, you need to be single for 3-4 months or almost a year minimum, right? Like, but with time may come some exposure of, hey, this is the effects of the relationship. This is what it looked like.
Yeah.
Enough time for reflection. And so that's just kind of my thoughts off the cuff.
Yeah. Okay. What about a person that hops into one relationship and then like they break up, and then two days later or like a week later they go to another person, and they just go into that cycle? What would you say to that person? That, like, would you tell them, hey, slow down, like, you need to find time for yourself? Or do you think they're coping with something that, like a trauma, or maybe, I don't know?
Man, that's a good question. I would, man, my thing is like assume nothing, just ask questions. So I would have a lot of questions. I would be curious to know, like, is staying out of relationships a challenge, right? Like, are you able to, like, in other words, are you able to be by yourself and be okay with that for a season and for some time? Right? Like, I'd be curious to know, what does that look like? Could there be some traumas? Could there be some, past events that persuade this person to do such a thing like that?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Past events permits us to live in the presence. So, like, we are the way that we are because of, like, the past events that we've been through and experience that we've lived, right? Like, how do we get knowledge? Through exposure of things, right? So, like, and also, like, nature versus nurture. Like, it takes a village to raise a child. So, like, we are not just, we didn't just accumulate knowledge and experience haphazardly. Like, we are the way that we are for a reason.
Yeah.
So that would be some questions that I would have, like, what was your past relationships like? What was your childhood like? Some of these things. How did we get here?
Yeah.
That would be that would be my question.
Has there ever been like a time in your moment that someone hurt you, and when you reflect back, you're like, oh, it's because of this and this and this?
I would. Man, it's been a long time since I've been in a relationship, so I'm trying to remember.
Does it scare you to how would I phrase this? Does it scare that you're gonna be vulnerable again with somebody? Because that, for me, that's one thing. Like, as of right now, like, I've been single for almost a year now, and like, I want to talk to people, but sometimes I get a little scared that I'm like, I get a little too vulnerable. I'm just like, this person might leave. And I was like, so that's why I'm just like, I kind of self-sabotage it. But then sometimes I see their true colors. I'm like, I'm glad that I stood away from that. So I just, like, out of curiosity, is it just because, like, are you scared to be a little vulnerable with somebody, or is it just because, like, you're not actively looking?
No, it doesn't have to do with fear of, like, being vulnerable.
Yeah.
No, I think with self-confidence and knowing who I am.
Yeah.
Like, I understand I'm not for everybody.
Yeah.
And I think once you have that mentality that you can't be vulnerable with everybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like this old saying, like respect is given, but trust is earned. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like access has to be earned. So like you have to earn that.
Yeah.
And so through like, vetting, I can kind of tell, okay, yeah, maybe I can tell this person, this is what I'm going through. So I may not tell them my deepest, darkest secret. I might just give them one little thing and see how do they do with that.
Okay, that's what I do. That's what I do. Is there a word for that, like psychologically? Or
Not that I can think of. Maybe if there's a therapist watching or listening, put it in the chat.
Yeah.
But like off the top of my head, I can't think of it. I just call it vetting.
Gotcha.
That's what I call it.
Yeah.
I just call it vetting. Just seeing. You don't just give everybody your deepest, darkest secret, right?
Yeah.
So, and even then, if the person doesn't receive what I'm sharing with them well, two things can be true at once. It sucks, and okay, you just that's just clarity. My mom, I like to quote my mom in sessions all the time, and I tell my mom that all the time that I quote her, and she laughs. But she used to just drop a lot of nuggets, and my mom said, people will show you who they are, believe them the first time. So like, hey, this is who you are. Like you couldn't take it well. That's cool. Yeah. That's cool, and not to say like people can't change, but like. This informs you of where they are right now.
Yeah.
And in this moment, you're not able to handle vulnerability for whatever reason. My vulnerability, not vulnerability in general, but mine. And that sucks. And that's okay. And, but there's somebody out there that can. And that's the mindset that I have. You may not be able to. I would have loved for her to. And that sucks. And there's somebody else that can.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I feel like they might turn off or might overheat. So okay. I might switch the cameras. And then we're going to go to our part 2 of our spiritual realm. And then we're going to talk more into with Rob. So let me just switch out the cameras. Well, we just took a little break. Switching the cameras. So if the quality did change a lot, I apologize. But all right. So my first question to you, how did you get into music?
How'd I get into music? Yeah. Well, I've always been musically inclined, so music has always been with me. So, I actually started playing drums at like 3 years old, and then I stopped my sophomore year of high school because I love football. So that was music. Music was my first love. Sports was like a close second. Is still. So I had that fell off for a little bit. Music fell off, and then maybe after, when did it fall off? 2015 is when I gave up music, and then 2018 is when I was done with sports in college, and so I picked up the piano, and then one thing led to another, and now I'm here.
How did you become a worship leader?
Oh, man. So I moved to Raleigh after I graduated from North Carolina A&T Aggie Prod. And my dad was like, hey, there's a church that needs a worship leader. And mind you, I was 22 at the time, just turned 22. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I don't know how to. I only played the piano. I started in 2018, late 2018. So at that point, it was only like 4 years that I learned. And so if you know anything about instruments, like playing something for 4 years, specifically piano, is like, I equate that to like a 4-year-old learning English. Like we can use some words, but you can't, like you wouldn't expect a 15-year-old vocabulary from a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
It's just, there might be some prodigies out there, but it wasn't me. So, I ended up, I just kept throwing it off. I was like, nah, I don't want to. And then, they were talking about a worship leader, so I'm assuming they want them to sing. At that point in time, I had just started singing because I joined North Carolina A&T Gospel Choir 2019. That was my first time ever singing. So I've only been singing in front of people for now 6 years now. It's 2025. So I was like, nah, I don't want to do that. So at the time, that was fresh. Never had led worship before. Never played piano by myself. I played at my home church, Agape, in Clemens, North Carolina. I did that for a little bit, and I was just learning right beside their former music director. And so I was just watching him playing pads while he was playing piano, messing up and stinking it up, man. But I was learning. And so, but yeah, I just kept pulling it off, holding it off, holding it off. And then, so here they needed help for a couple of Sundays playing drums. They needed a drummer. And so I was like, you know what, I'll come and play. So I did that. And they were like, well, yeah, we need a worship leader. Can you do it? And I was like, you know what? Okay, prayed about it and felt right. So yeah, here I am.
Yeah. How because I know y'all go through a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I know y'all go through a lot, especially with musicians here and there.
Mm-hmm.
How do you prepare, like, for a normal Sunday?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like, how do you usually prepare? And then I'll go into a deeper question after that one.
Yeah. Well, at first I used to pick my set list out, or the set list for Sundays, either like Monday or Tuesday of that week. But I started to do, and what I continue to do is pick the set list for the entire month. So that way I can just focus in on, the set list for that week, and then next week knowing ahead of time what it's going to be, so I can, practice, additional songs, for the weeks to come. And it gives me better time to prepare, and it's easier for the team too, because they know, like, okay, in 2 weeks we got a new song, so from now until then I can just familiarize myself with that song.
Set list, or the
Yeah,
song,
and that set list too. So prepare the set list, practice, and then at first, because I'm here, I am the creative arts director. And so I oversee 3 different departments in the ministry, which is worship, sound, and production. And so I would do announcements, record that stuff, and then sound, make sure the stage is right, make sure it reflects on the board. At the time, it's X32. Now we have the Behringer Wing. And so just making sure that's fine. Doing arrangements for the set list, kind of all over the place. But, fixing the arrangements, making sure it's good, making sure everybody else is fine. And fine being like the personnel, the people on stage, helping them out with their parts. And so just some of your typical prep work for what's to come Sunday. So what you see on Sunday is because of a lot of people working hard Monday until then.
Gotcha. What would you say or an advice for a worship leader that is, like, let's say there's a person in the worship team that is here, but sometimes there's some Sundays where they forget to play, they forget their notes, they forget their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
What's something that, as a worship leader, what would you do in that situation? It's not constant, but let's say once every 3 months something happens with this fella, or you see that there's something with him, but or let's say there's no more, like, gas or something like that.
Well, this is something that our pastor says and used to say quite often, and this is something that I full-heartedly believe in: praise in public, correct in private. So I don't like to call people out in front of people. I know what that's like.
Yeah.
And that's not a good feeling. So I just pull them aside, be like, hey man, I've noticed, maybe it's going on a couple of weeks, here and there, is everything okay? What's going on? Not assuming, like, man, you suck. Why do you always suck? Right? Like, you never know what could have been going on.
Yeah.
Like, emergencies happen, life happens. And so, just kind of hearing their heart and seeing, what's happening. Cause you never know. You could have been the only person to check in on them.
Yeah.
And they could have really been going through something. It's like, man, I was going to quit, the worship team, because life just got intense. But because I appreciate you for checking in, that means a lot. And I apologize that I messed up, and I apologize that I wasn't on time, or whatever the case may be. So that's how I would handle that situation, just with a lot of grace. Try to be as understanding as possible, because you never know what people go through.
Yeah. How is that transitioning to new people that are coming in?
New people that are coming in.
That want to try to go into that worship team or anything like that. What do you see, like some characteristic or anything like that you're like, okay, this person can definitely help out?
Yeah. The biggest thing is, aside from, like, realistically speaking, aside from their talent, like, you want to be on stage and be presentable. You don't have to be like the best guitar player or best singer ever. But can you hold a note?
Yeah.
Can you read chord charts? Can you play the right notes that are being shown or that's supposed to be played? And that's a prerequisite, right? Like, that's what you need. But secondly, like, the heart posture, like, who is that person?
Yeah.
Both on the stage and off. Like, we're supposed to be ministers, period. As believers in Christ. So, what are your fruits? What do your fruits look like? You know what I mean? So that's what I look for. And we have a standard at New Life Church, and the standard's the standard. And so, we go off of, and the standard, to be specific, is, what does the Bible say?
Yeah.
We don't throw in, we understand that religion is man-made, but the Bible isn't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's inspired. Now, man wrote it, but it's inspired by God.
Yeah.
That's scripture. So, the standard, what's in the book, man? What's in the Bible? That's the answer.
Yeah.
So, I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What's a Bible verse that you keep going back to?
I'm trying to think, because there's a lot of verses that I stick with. It kind of fluctuates, like, it changes depending, like, the season. But I think one of the biggest things, because I've always dealt with anxiety, like nervousness, whether it's like on stage or like speaking to people, or like at one point in time dealing with social anxiety, because I used to get bullied a lot, like really, really bad. Like, I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. I thought, like, because my friends, people that I thought were my friends, they always tore me down anytime I got around them. So, for that, 2 Timothy 1:7, God hasn't given me a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. So, just remembering, like, man, that fear, that anxiety doesn't come from God.
Yeah.
And I can cast all my cares to Him. I think that's like in Peter. So, that would be one scripture.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, man.
Is there a chapter that, like, you always go into, like, you always rereading?
I've been reading. Oh man, the light turned on.
Yeah, I know. Battery died on that one.
Oh man. I know Jude is only one chapter. That's a good one. I'm trying to think. There's a lot of good chapters and good reads in Corinthians, and specifically Romans. Because Romans is big on grace. But if I had to pick, I'd probably say James. James is a heavy hitting book. Yeah, first or second chapter. It's a heavy hitting book.
Gotcha.
And it talks about, like, faith without works is dead, meaning like salvation.
Yeah.
Like doing the walk, not just talking the talk, but actually walking it out. It's a heavy hitter.
Yeah. What's it called? Rome's, it's next in my book that I'm reading, because to be honest, when I was going through some troubles on my own, God was talking to me, and I read the book of Acts. Very powerful.
Oh man,
that's the first book I read, like, fully. And then I remember him telling me, like, read about your past, and I was like, well, I never took notes, but I was like, let me read the book of Samuel. So I started reading that, and it spoke to me. I was just like, yo. Then I went to Kings, and then I'm about to finish Kings, and then I'm gonna go to First and Second Kings, but then I'm gonna go to Rome's. It's a process, but because you talked about anxiety, and I had never, like, again, I'm still trying to navigate myself through reading. I haven't read Timothy yet, but what would you recommend for anybody that's starting reading the Bible? Where would you recommend them to read? A lot of people say, please read from Genesis, but some people might understand that. There's other people that recommend the Gospels, starting. Yeah. So, what would you recommend?
Man, the Gospels would be good. I know my dad used to recommend Ephesians.
Oh.
So Ephesians could be a good one. But yeah, the Gospels or Ephesians.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Especially talking about your dad. How was being a pastor's kid?
Being a PK was actually pretty cool. For me, it was because it just like everybody knew me, so I kind of felt I felt like famous, like that's my dad, and people like and respect my dad. So it was always easy for me. Nobody gave me a hard time or anything. Like maybe middle school or high school, they started to see like, oh yeah, that's a pastor's kid, and this dude's kind of different from everybody else.
Yeah.
So the way he talks and all that stuff, but other than that, like at the church, like people would make exceptions for me. I got to get like free candy and stuff, and I'm a big candy person, so they'd be like, "Oh yeah, it's Pastor Barr's son. He's fine. He can come back here." And it was just really cool.
Yeah.
And then there's also some times where like my dad would like make me speak in front of people, and I didn't like that, or being in front of people in general. And he still does that to this day.
Jeez.
So knowing anytime he speaks and I'm there, I could get called up there.
Yeah, I remember when I was researching you. I just put Rob, and I put your last name. How do you say your last name?
Barr.
Okay, I was right.
Yeah.
All right, Rob Barr. But your dad comes up, and he was preaching at New Life, and you're back there, and he was just talking about you. Like, I don't remember word for word, but I think this was like 2-3 years ago, and I just remember like you're just like, I'm just gonna stick. But I remember Emotion Night. This might get cut off, but I remember Emotion Night that you were saying, and I want to get a little deep with it because I don't know what happened in your past. But I remember you were saying that like your past wasn't rated G. Like, can we talk about that?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, like so what happened?
Oh man, yeah, you did some research.
I was there.
Were you there?
Yeah, because we were playing Living. What was that one? Living for the First Time. And I remember Pastor Matt.
Oh, Encounter Night. You were there for Encounter Night. Yeah. You said Emotion Night. I was thinking like the kids. I was like, man, this.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Encounter Night. That's what I mixed them up. But I remember that we were playing Living for the First Time again, and then we just stayed in the instrumental. We were like, hold on, hold the track. And I remember that you were saying all that.
Oh,
man. And it always got stuck in my mind. Like, what happened?
Yeah, man. Well, yeah, I always, loved Jesus and was always a believer, but my relationship with Christ was more so because of my parents than it was because of me. I didn't really have a true encounter with Jesus. So, I was with the wrong crowd. I didn't have a clean mouth. I used to have a dirty mouth. I didn't always, use my words wisely. Lust was something that I dealt with, and obviously, like, I'm a single man, heterosexual man. Like, I'd be lying to you if I'm like, oh yeah, I don't look at women and it's not tempting. You know what I mean? But like, man, that's why I was like, yeah, my past isn't rated
G.
Yeah. And my identity, I was trying to be somebody that I wasn't. And I stuck out like a sore thumb, and I was still trying to fit in. Listening to the wrong music, listening to the wrong advice, listening to the wrong like entertainment, you know, and then trying to mimic stuff that I heard, and it just wasn't fitting. Like,
Gotcha.
and I didn't smoke or drink. I have like this wild, crazy past. I've never been in jail or anything like that. But you can still have a messed up past, not an ideal past, without doing any of those things. And that's what I was involved in. So,
Gotcha.
yeah, man.
What's it called? Have you defeated lust?
I'll say lust is one of those things that always comes up to the surface, and I have to actively make a decision to defeat it every day.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So it's difficult, but I do what I can. I'm committed to beating it, and so every day I make that decision.
Is there something that helps you, like either reading the Bible? I know that there's some people that, especially me. I'm like, it's something that's it's a struggle. For me, sometimes I try to go into music, but then a few hours later, I fall back into it. It's still a struggle. Like, I'm still trying to fight it, especially with my flesh, because I think in the Book of Romans, I could be wrong. I haven't read it, but I remember someone telling me about, what's it called, when, what's his name? Apostle Paul. He was like, I can't wait for the day that I die, where I can be separated from the flesh and the spirit. So that's the thing. Like, unfortunately, you can't die. You have to starve your what's it called?
Starve your flesh.
And it's very hard because your flesh wants to eat, but you can't get rid of it. Is there something that helps you more into, or any advice for the guys or girls that are going through it?
Run.
Yeah.
No, that's what the Bible says.
Yeah.
It says this type of temptation, you got to run from it. You don't try to fight it.
Yeah.
Mike Todd said this maybe last year in January, or it was the year before. I think it was last year, but he was like, you know, there's certain things that we are going through that we put ourselves through. And I'm botching what he said, but it was just wild what he said. It was during like 21 days of fasting, and he was talking about, like, you know, you're walking in a minefield and you don't have to do that. And so for me, it had me reflecting, like, what's my minefield? Like, what situations am I putting myself in? Is that social media? I deleted my social media because TikTok, didn't matter how hard I tried, there was always some lust that was popping up.
Yeah.
And you can be like, oh, this is a video, I'm just gonna skip past it. But
it starts creeping up on you.
Sometimes, flesh has its ways. Like, it does not stop. It never will stop. Flesh never stops. So, you know, run. If that's like, I can't be on TikTok anymore, that's just me. I'm not saying this for everybody. But if it's like, I can't be on social media anymore, cool. You know, and let's be real, like, you know, sometimes, like, when a woman is walking, you know, you just notice.
Yeah.
That's the first look. Cool. If it happens, it happens. You saw it the first time, but making that decision to turn around and look again, that's your decision.
Yeah.
That takes a lot more emotion to turn around and look. You know what I mean? So making the decision, I don't care, even if it hurts me not to look, I'm just going to keep walking. You know what I mean? So, like, that's what it looks like to run away. Not, oh, yeah, I'm going to look, and then I'm not going to think anything of it. No, you're putting yourself in a minefield. Yeah. So run.
That's something that, like, I'm very grateful that my ex-girlfriend kind of, like, trained me in that. Because, especially when freshman year, like, we would go out or anything like that. But sometimes, like, I would look back, especially like that, and she would hit me. She would hit me back of the head, like, dude, what are you doing? And then, like, anytime when she, like, if we're going to, like, the women's session or anything like that, like, she would cover my eyes. And especially now, if anything like that, I do that. And some people are like, what are you doing? It's normal. It's women's clothes. What are you going to do? And I was like, out of respect for everybody, I choose not to. And I'm very grateful that, like, she did train me in that way. It hurt getting hit behind the head, but, like, I'm very grateful.
Oh, yeah, that's good right there, man. That's good.
Absolutely.
That's good.
And I know that, what's it called? I know in the Bible it refers to, I forgot his name, but he's the pastor of 2819.
Oh, Philip Anthony Mitchell.
Philip Anthony. He was talking about lust, and, like, the way that he said is cut it off, and, like, cut if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. If your right eye causes you to sin,
Yell it out.
Yell it out. And it's not saying rhetorically cut your hand off, but what he's saying is like if like social media is causing you to look at all these women, and then a few minutes later you're at a website, cut the source off. And that's something that like unfortunately as much as I want to cut social media off, I have to work in social media because unfortunately, but I try to censor everything I can. And I usually try to leave my phone away from me. I like kind of like a detox. I try not to be 24/7 because I know sooner or later there's something I'm just like, all right, I need to throw my phone away. And
That's good. That's good.
It's a struggle. I'm not gonna be coming here like, I defeated it. No, it's definitely a struggle. Let's go to another question.
Sure.
How do you forgive somebody when they have hurt you?
Well, like the Bible talks about, Jesus said, what is it? Give 77 times 7. And so, for me, I take that as in like, maybe sometimes that's how you have to forgive somebody. Make the decision to forgive daily, maybe by the minute, by the hour, remembering, they're forgiven. And a pastor mentioned this, and I keep botching all of the things that these pastors have been saying, but it's just good stuff. So I'm going to try to paraphrase to the best of my ability. He mentioned like, is the blood of Christ sufficient enough? Does it cover that sin too? Yes. Then do you forgive? What's the answer to that question? Yes. So that is it. You know what I mean? And the Bible, God is, he is, what is the word that I'm looking for? He doesn't scapegoat. Man, that's not the verbiage I'm looking for, but he's very clear on like forgiving others, right? Like as your Father in heaven has forgiven you.
Yeah.
Right? Like forgive those as you would like to be forgiven. Right? Like, there's some prayer like for the husbands out there, right? Like, man, or maybe I think I'm kind of intertwining different verses. But for people in general, like, man, you may be blocking your blessing because you're not forgiving someone. Pastor Mike Todd said this. He used like an analogy of what forgiveness is like, or unforgiveness is like. He was like, unforgiveness is like drinking poison, hoping the other person will die. You know what I mean? Like me drinking poison, hoping the person that offended me dies. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you're holding all that hate, all that anger, animosity inside, and it's only affecting you. You know what I mean? And so it's not worth it. So those are some tips and things that I think about when forgiving. And it's easier said than done. Let's be honest. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah. I was gonna say on top of that, like, let's say you have forgiven them, but now let me skip that question because it's gonna get too complicated. Because I was just gonna talk over forgiveness. Is it fine for it to be distant with that person?
yeah, I think so. Now, if the Bible says otherwise, I can just text you and be like, hey man, I was wrong about this.
Yeah.
But forgiveness doesn't necessarily equate to like them having the same access to you again. You know what I mean? Like access is earned.
Yeah.
Forgiveness isn't something that you earn. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing in the Bible that says they have to earn your forgiveness. So like that's already given.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So, but again, that access, I can forgive you, and you were my best friend. You won't be my best friend again. You know what I mean? Trust. I trusted you in this way. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can re-earn that trust, but like, you're not just gonna get back to the place that you were. Nah, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
I forgive you. I don't hold things against you. And I've been informed. So
Gotcha.
I'm going to make an informed decision for myself. Love you from afar.
Gotcha.
That's my thoughts on it.
All right. For my final question to wrap it
Mm-hmm.
up, how would you explain grace? And what's the other word?
Mercy.
Mercy. That's the word. How would you describe to somebody? What's the difference between it?
Man, all these things I've talked about in session.
Yeah.
I think grace is Smokey Norfolk is a old school gospel singer. I grew up on Smokey Norfolk. Grace is what did he say? Grace is what could have been. Mercy is what should have been. And like I think of grace as in like a teacher giving a grace period. You know what I mean? Like, homework was supposed to be due, so on the 13th, but I see a lot of y'all struggling with it or for whatever reason it's not being done. So I'm going to give you a grace period. Okay. You need to get it in by the 15th. You know what I mean? Mercy is more like, that grace period is up. You still got to turn it in. And, I could give you a 0, but, man, you're a really good student, or, for whatever reason, they see it fit to not give you up to like your to that consequence of your action. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's like, here, I'm gonna give you some slack.
Okay.
You're fine.
Yeah.
Gone. Completely wiped away. Grace period is like, here you go. You can get it fixed. You can get it right within this amount of time. But mercy is like, you still didn't get it right. I could slay you right now. You're free of sin.
Okay.
That's how I see it.
Yeah. For me, I'm more of a food person.
Oh,
so,
man.
So for me, it's like grace. It's like we all go to a fancy restaurant and everybody orders the biggest stuff, like top of the end, and you order some chicken tenders because that's the cheapest thing you can get.
Oh, man.
All right, and then everybody's like, "Oh, are we splitting the bill evenly?" And you're like, "Whoa, I got some chicken tenders." And like the grace of it for me that I understood it is like the next person beside you is like, no, I'll cover your bill because I know that you're short on cash. Don't worry about it. This is the grace of it, and this is mercy. Now the grace of it is, do you want dessert? Even though you're not paying for it, here's an extra step for it. If that makes sense, that's how I understand it. For me, it's just. I'm more of a food person.
Yeah. No, that's something to think about right there.
Yeah,
I'd never heard it that way.
Yeah.
So now you got me thinking. Now I might use that in session. I might start quoting. I know a guy.
Yeah.
I know a guy named Sam. I like to quote my friend Sam in sessions.
Thank you. Yeah, because like for me, I feel like a lot of people, especially like as much as they understand school, because they're in it. But I feel like food, they're already tasting it, and just to get that little snap from, I usually kind of pull that out. Trying to explain it, I had someone I did explain it, but I had it reverse, and they kind of corrected me. I think I still have it reverse. I don't know, but yeah.
Man, that's good right there. That's good right there. Yeah, I might ask you about it again so I can make sure I get it right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to mess it up. That was good right there.
Well, that's the end of the Double S podcast. Thank you, Rob, for being here.
Hey, man, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
it's a pleasure.
And that's it. All right, bye-bye.